When I say the word leadership, what comes to mind? Do you think of a specific person that influenced your life, or do you dive into descriptive words like decisive, dedicated, and diligent? No matter the case, being a leader is a privilege we are all faced with at times. Our guest today has been serving in a leadership role for most of his life. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Win, a show where we interview champions and trailblazers and ask questions to uncover and discover their championship traits for succeeding in sports, work, and life. Our guest today, the Honorable Patrick J. Murphy, is the first Iraq War veteran elected to Congress, the former acting Secretary of the Army, a healthcare innovator in the public and private sectors, and a champion for veterans and mental health. As we'll find out in the show, much, much more than that. He has worked with and among the men and women of uniform, professional athletes, former congressmen and congresswomen, and presidents of the United States. And we are privileged to have him on the show today. Patrick, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Lee and JB, thanks so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I'm a huge fan and looking forward to the conversation today.
Thanks for coming on, Patrick. Appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, no, it really is a privilege to have you here. And there's so many questions we have for you today, Pat, but I got to start with this one. I want to start with your upbringing, because you and I are from really the same area. Now, when you grow up here, it's not the same area. We're arch rivals. But, when you grow up and get older, it's the same area. And legend has it that you were a security guard at Veterans Stadium, or the Vet, as we called it when it was still existed. Back in the day, I also know you were a hockey player through college. So Philly fans and Philly in general can be a tough place to sharpen your teeth. So how did growing up in the Philadelphia area mold you as a young man?
Well, listen, I love being from Northeast Philadelphia. So I grew up with that row house mentality. My dad was a veteran, served in the Navy, then served for 20 years as a Philadelphia police officer. In our area, where you grew up, they all ask you, like, what parish are you from? So I'm a St. Anselm's guy. My mother was, actually my mother used to be a Catholic nun. She left a convent, eventually met Jack Murphy. Of course, in politics, I used to say, you have to tell stories. So I used to be like, oh, she dumped Jesus for Jack Murphy. She did not like that version of the story because that wasn't true. She said, I left a comment and then met your dad. I was like, I know, but it doesn't sound as good. But no, I grew up in Northeast Philly, St. Anselm's, then went to Archbishop Ryan High School, which was at the time the largest Catholic high school. Right. We had 4 hockey teams, so I was blessed to be.
Presence. Yeah,
was blessed to be a captain of the team. My last couple of years, and then went to play hockey in college. But yeah, I grew up sharpening my my elbows as a security guard at the old Veterans Stadium at 700 level,
right.
And I joke, Lee, and I know Sergeant Major JB knows this. That was frankly probably tougher duty than my time in Baghdad, Iraq with the 82nd Airborne Division, even though I got shot at in Baghdad. So
they used to have a jail cell in the Vet, right? They're a holding cell.
They did.
Yeah, right? Everyone in the link.
Yep. Yep. It was Judge Seamus McCaffrey, who was a cop of my dad, who went to law school at night. That was the head of Eagles Court. And I grew up with his son, who's an FBI agent, Jimmy McCaffrey, who played football at Archbishop Ryan when I played hockey. So it's a small world, and it's where Lee and I grew up. And now I know Lee. I coach my son, who's a hockey player now. He's in 6th grade. He's now kind of focused on basketball as well. But we were arch rivals. I grew up in obviously in Philly, but I grew up going playing hockey in Grundy Arena, which is in Bristol. And I used to be like, man, all the rich people live in Bristol, Bucks County, because they have their own hockey rink there. They have houses on the river. So when I left for college in the Army, and when I came back, I got a house on the river. So I basically made it. I'm here at my house in Bristol, right on the Delaware River, and I feel blessed. Of course, there's wealthier areas in Bucks County, but Bristol will always be my home.
Yeah, what I always say about this area is that, and I've worked and lived in Manhattan. I've done all these things, but Philadelphia just understands a hard worker over a superstar. That's one of the things that's always kind of separated the city. And one thing I'll always say too is that, think about your career in politics and in the Army and everything. And I always say that nobody hates Philadelphia sports more than Philadelphia fans. So when you grow up in that environment, man, you want to talk about taking things off your shoulder, right? But I'm proud to know that we're from the same area, sir. And I loved hearing that story of the upbringing, because it is an interesting place to grow up. There's really no other place quite like it.
Yeah, and this we could talk about my time at West Point and other to combat deployments, etc. But JB, him and I served in a defining moment in our country's history when less than 1% served the longest wars in American history. But, when neither one of us graduated from West Point, but we were there. And West Point is really the Athens and Sparta of America. So all 4,000 cadets there are athletes. They have to play a sport. They don't have to play necessarily Division I sport like we have, but they have to play at least intramurals. But they also are all scholars. So it's that Sparta and the Athens. And, we actually produce more Oxford Rhodes Scholars out of West Point than any other college in America, except for maybe Stanford and MIT, but we're always usually top 5. But even in staff and faculty, I mean, when you're there, not even as cadet, when I was 27 years old, I'm a skinny kid from Northeast Philadelphia that, went to community college at first and then played hockey at King's College up in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. It's part of Delaware Valley Collegiate Hockey Conference. And, my senior year making the all-star team in college, playing the all-star game at Princeton University, get thrown out for probably, you're not really supposed to check or fight in all-star games in college.
That's
and
hockey, yeah.
I knew I wasn't getting drafted. I was going to the Army. So to me, it was like, let's give the fans what they want. So, but, to go within 10 years to go teach at West Point, I could tell you stories about, playing staff and faculty, softball, staff faculty, basketball. I mean, I broke a colonel's ribs one. I mean, I could go on and on, but that was kind of the ethic. I mean, you're there to compete. You're there to train warriors and scholars, and you were supposed to be the embodiment of that too. It wasn't like, hey, you're teaching, 3 sections of constitutional law and calling it a day. I mean, I was moving and jabbing, with those young Americans, and I still do it. I mean, JB will tell you, when I was, running the Army under President Obama, I mean, I was out there PTing with troops, whatever they were doing, I was doing, because you have to lead from the front. You can't lead from some desk.
I love it. I love it. Patrick, I remember that lunchtime hockey with Colonel Moulton in that group, that whole group playing this lunchtime hockey, and you get back, you'd be bloody after lunchtime hockey. And they're like, what'd you just do? Lunchtime hockey. Why are you bleeding? Yeah, I got sticked in the mouth, so it's great. No, I love it. And being from Pittsburgh, we have this Pittsburgh-Philadelphia rivalry. I've been all over Philly. My son, played Marco played college hockey. So we were all over the area there when we lived in New Jersey and West Point and finishing my military career. And Pat, you had a storied military career. You had a political arm of our great country. You served since, a teenager. You were a JAG officer in the Army Airborne Special Operations. And where did this foundation of service come from? Your father was a police officer, but you had this foundation of service. I love it. And I think that's why we've always gotten along. Where did that start, though?
Well, it goes back to that row house mentality. You take, we used to share a step with the Rons, and the Rons, if we were running short on milk, you go borrow, some milk for the cereal in the morning from the Rons or vice versa. You're out getting a dozen donuts, weekend, you get them a dozen donuts. Like, you just took care of each other. When the snow came, you go, my brother and I, we'd go shovel the neighbors, especially elderly for the people that could pay, we would charge them, a couple bucks to shovel their steps. But for elderly people, we did it for free. Our elderly neighbors, we never would take a dime from them. So, that ethic of taking care of people on your left and your right, that row house mentality. My brother also served. He was search and rescue with the Air Force. So he did 2 deployments after 9/11. I've done 2. My sister's a public school teacher. We used to joke in our neighborhood, if your dad didn't leave for work with a uniform on, we thought they were unemployed, because in our neighborhood, it was cops, firefighters, mailmen. My mom was a legal secretary, but, I was very, very blessed with that, upbringing of having a servant's heart, giving more than you receive. And, for those, who are given much, much is expected. And so that was just the way we were raised. And it was, I will tell you, that ethic is something that I don't think you can just talk about it. You have to show. And so my dad, even when he was a police officer, he was working side jobs. My mom was working 9 to 5 at a law firm. She was, during the Christmas season, save for Christmas gifts, she was working at Spiegel factories, making calls about, Christmas orders and stuff like that, doing an extra job. And so, I remember, my dad would drive 18-wheelers on sometimes on weekends if he had off from the job. And being an 18-wheeler, to me, it wasn't surprising that, by the time I was a senior in high school, I literally had 4 jobs. I always worked hard in my life. At that time, I wasn't working smart. I learned, and that's the one message I give to young people. Like, I deliver newspapers in the morning, and I worked at a law firm as a messenger. I waited tables at Perkins Family Restaurant, the graveyard shift, the 11 at night, the 7 in the morning shift, and then I go to hockey practice. And then I would, security guard during Eagle season. I worked in the marketing department for the Philadelphia Phillies. That was my fourth job. What I didn't do, besides playing hockey and doing those jobs, I never really opened up a book in high school. And I don't say that like laughingly. I didn't work smart, and that when I did go to play hockey at King's College, which is Division III school, I was not even accepted. It's my brother's the captain of the team. I was going to go play with my older brother, and I only applied to one school because that's where I wanted to go, and they rejected me. So that failure early on was like, wow. So I went to Bucks County Community College and made the dean's list for the first time in my life. When I had to pay my own way, I was like, hey, I'm not going to miss class. If I had to pay for this out of pocket, and, I was still working jobs, but I would go just to classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I would work Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. So to me, that that ethic, and I kept going. I mean, JB will tell you, when we were at West Point, we had lunchtime hockey, and Colonel Holden liked me because I was a Philly kid. He was from Boston, and we were both there. 9/11 happened, and so I deployed to combat right away. I was hoping to I was getting ready for Ranger School. I had already been to airborne school and air assault school. My two uncles, were airborne paratroopers, and I went to follow their footsteps. And I deployed to Bosnia instead. And we're not talking about geopolitical issues, but people forget the greatness of America is, yes, we have the number one economy in the world. Yes, we have the number one military in the world. But at our heart, we're the reluctant warrior as a nation. And so Bosnia, people forget, we went to Bosnia because they were killing Muslims in the side of the road in towns like Srebrenica. I mean, literally killing 15-year-olds to 6-year-olds just because they're Muslim. It was the worst ethnic cleansing in Europe since World War II. And the other European countries, with all due respect to them, but they were just watching it happen. It wasn't until we went in there and said, hey, we're going to put boots in the ground. We're going to put our men and women to stop it in Bosnia and Kosovo. And we stopped that worst ethnic cleansing. But, I went there. And when I went there right after 9/11, within a couple of months, I'm the JAG. I got my Army commission through ROTC. The Army coming to go to law school. I'm there teaching out down the line, teaching at West Point after being a prosecutor. And to me, I was like, man, I can't believe I'm 27 years old teaching constitutional law at West Point. 10 years ago, I'm basically a college student at a community college. But the Army opened up so many doors that taught me how to compete with others from Harvard, Notre Dame, and all this. And I got confidence, like I'm just as good as these other cats, if not better. And so to me, it was a process of growth, and then when I'm in Bosnia, I have to tell a story. I hit it off with my boss, who was a colonel, full-bird colonel. He was a ground forces commander. We hit it off because we were both Catholics. We would go to church on Sundays and we would talk hockey. We were in combat, so we weren't like, we had weapons all the time. So it wasn't like we were playing hockey or any sports. But his name was Mark Milley. Mark Milley was a Princeton University hockey player, graduate 1980 class. Went on to become a general. Went on to become a 2-star, 3-star, 4-star general. He's now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I was his lawyer right after 9/11. And again, I was blessed. Here I'm getting in a fight. My boss is sending me to combat. I'm like, hey, sir, I want to go to Afghanistan. I want to go to Afghanistan. I want to be part of the invasion. And he's like, no, I need you to go with my classmate, General Petraeus, and his team. And part of his team was then Mark Milley, who I'm a big fan of. And we had a chance to run the Army together, in the Pentagon. And he's now continuing to do great things on behalf of our nation.
Love it.
Yeah, Pat, I'll tell you, first off, I appreciate you being so open about your time in the service, and JB knows this. I have a real reverence for the military. I always have, as a young athlete, as a coach. And there's so many words I could pick here that military men and women embody. But the two I want to focus on, which you kind of talked about, is, the first one is standards, right? The highest standards. And I'm going to apply this to sports in a minute, right? You bring the highest of standards to everything you do. When I go to coach a team, I try and establish standards immediately. I think it's something a lot of coaches don't do. The other thing is service. Now, I don't need to go into service when people serve in the military, but it goes beyond that. And you just said this when you were talking about shoveling other people's driveways and going out of your way. I think for young coaches and young athletes, it's so important to institute standards and service into their environment. And I don't think a lot of coaches do it. Quick example, when I was playing in college and coaching college hockey, we would always go into the inner cities and read to the kids, right? I would always make our players do that, whether they wanted to or not, right? We'd find ways to get involved, and what I say to today's kids, because when I was coaching college, social media was kind of young at the time. A lot of people, I posted about it. Well, that's not service. that's posting, right? I think, and you said this, and this is why I'm bringing it up. You have to go do it. You have to actually physically go do it. Number one, it's maybe the most rewarding thing in the world when you do it. You get addicted to it really quickly, right? And I think that's the key to establishing it. And then two is to set a standard of not just the service, but also of this is what we're trying to accomplish, and everything that we do heads towards that. And like I've met coaches say, why would I do that? Why would we go dedicate time? We got to win a game. And it's because one, if you're not in the NHL, MLB, NFL, NBA, you're still in a development stage, number one, and you're developing people. So that's super important at any level. And number two is that if you want to make a well-rounded team, this is part of it, right? I always like to tell my players the championship moment, the other team didn't do X, Y, and Z. They didn't run up the hill. They didn't go dedicate their time to their community. They didn't do this, but you did, right? So I'm sorry, it's a little long-winded, but can you just comment on standards and service, both in the military and sport, however, and leadership, obviously, and how important that can be really in any team environment. It doesn't have to be just sports.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it is about standards and service. And first, on the service aspect of it, you have to live a purpose-driven life. You have to give back. God gave us all unique talents, and it's our responsibility to make our community and our country better. And you do that by interacting with the people that you come in contact with. And so, if you're blessed enough to have that responsibility to be a coach, be assistant coach, be a player, it is about giving back. It is about being there. We say in the military that character is how you are when nobody's looking. And that's the standard, that you have to be a leader of character. You have to show up. You have to be on time. You have to be ready to have, basically, ready to give it your all, and remind yourself that, hey, God gave you two ears, but only one mouth for a reason. So when the coach is talking to you, you're not talking. When the coach is telling you how to do a drill, you're there watching them and trying to follow, their direction, because they're there to make you better, and they're there to push you. I was blessed, whether it was in my high school career, my college career, or even now. I mean, I still play men's league hockey. I mean, it is about, when you have standards, I have certain standards, that the unwritten rules of hockey. When I play men's league hockey and I'm playing against 20-year-olds, I'm 48 years old right now. I'm not as fast. I still think I'm as strong.
I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah, but I have old man strength now. But if there's a guy that, if my goalie has that puck and the guy, slashes my goalie or chips at my goalie's glove, I mean, that guy's going to be, face down on that ice. That's disrespect to my goalie. It's disrespect to me and my teammates. I had a guy last week, and again, I don't want to. I was never the fastest. My teammate from Sweden was the fastest in college. I was never. I led the team in penalties and points, except for the one time. Dave the Hammer Schultz, the all-time penalty minutes leader in NHL history. His son Chad was my defensive teammate, my line mate. He led the team in penalties.
Right.
That one
Thank
year.
God he was on your team, right?
Yeah, exactly. But he was built like a 5'10" fire truck. And I'm a 6'1" skinny kid that was 135 pounds. But I was going to PT with the Army during the week. And then I would have ice training as well in games. But even in men's league now, I mean, to me, I play men's league. It's for fun. It's a great league. But I'm in the Northeast Philly Flyer skate zone last week, and my defensive teammate, the puck went between his legs. He fell to his knees, and it was there. And the guy came over and just two-handed him, and he was defenseless. And he two-handed him and got on top of him. And so I went over and I grabbed the guy off him, and I threw him over, and I might have given him a face wash because he had a half shield and some other stuff, and the refs pulled me off. I got thrown out of the game, and I don't say that lightly, but the guy could have got hurt on my team. You can't let that happen. You got to protect each other. You got to have that row house mentality. And that was instilled in me at an early age, and that's how I was able to succeed in life in the Army. If I tell someone I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, even if it's not easy.
And the name of the channel is Grit. You're showing
I
grit
love
right
it.
there. Yeah.
I love it. Like I worked out this morning, Patrick. I'm going to go do 50 push-ups after this podcast because you got me so excited. Patrick, I remember like it was yesterday, you helping so many service members when you were an officer in the Army. And I always felt, soldiers were able to look to you for leadership and sound advice. I remember coming to you for sound advice. I needed help with something. I called him late at night, Lee, and he said, come to my office. And I showed up at 8:00 at night, and he helped me through some issues that I needed help with. And so we have a lot of coaches and business professionals listening to the show. Patrick, just talk us through why this leadership is like so important. We were at the foundation. I love how you called West Point Spartan and Athens. I love it because it's exactly what it was. And, we have that foundation of leadership of trying to teach these young men and women to be, greater than they are, and they can give back. But leadership is so important. And I think sometimes it's so misunderstood. So just talk us through that, why it's so important for everybody, coach, business professional, up and coming executive, whatever you are.
Yeah. Well, first of all, when you're blessed to coach young Americans, and, whether they're 5 years old or 15 years old or 24 years old, or lead a team in business, the reality of it is 99% of them will never be the CEO. They'll never be in the NHL. They'll never be, a billionaire, right? But they can be great. And you teach them how to be great. You teach them how to be better versions of themselves. And you push them, you pull them, you do what you need to do to be a leader, and you get in there and you roll up your sleeves with them. And so for me, that leadership development is so critically important. And that's why, JB, I appreciate you mentioning it, but JB, he was a sergeant major, the highest enlisted rank in the Army, in the military. And he is not a West Point graduate. I'm not a West Point graduate, but the Army asked the best of its leaders to go teach there or to be part of that staff and faculty for 2-3 years to make the long gray line, to make those leaders of character for a lifetime of service. And whether those new lieutenants, when they leave West Point, are going to do 5 years or 25 years, they're expected to give back to this nation. And to me, it's critically important to talk about it. I will never forget, I'm coaching these young Americans. My son and his classmate, they were about, I think 6 years old. So it's a couple of years ago. And our goalie, his name was Drew Picker. His twin sister, was there watching her practices. And I said to her one day, "Hey, Lila, why don't you practice with us? Why don't you get on the ice with us?" And she goes, "I can," because there was no girls like that. I'm like, "Yeah, come on. We can use an extra skater." She's now one of the best girl players. She's 12 years old now, 6 years later. One of the best players. I joke that she's probably going to be on an Olympic team. And she's never allowed to forget who her first coach was, Coach Pat. And Lila was doing push-ups with the boys. When they weren't doing a drill the right way, I had them do push-ups on the ice, and they were there to skate and be better skaters. But if they weren't listening, I had to get to them somehow. And if they were doing Army training, they were doing push-ups on the ice if they were, not behaving sometimes. But again, I took so much pride in teaching them. And then, when they made the mites on ice, the play in between the periods of the Philadelphia Flyers game, I'm in the locker room beforehand. I'm like, all right, whoever scores a goal, you might get asked to do an interview on the Jumbotron in front of 20,000 people. And my kids are like, what? I'm like, one of you, you're going to win this game. I'm like, listen, one of you are going to, and I go, we're going to do some media training. So when I get there, whatever the question they ask you, hey, what you think about that goal? What you think that? I go, this is what you do when I'm on TV. They ask me whatever question they want. I'm there to give the answer I want to give first, and then I'll answer their question. So whatever they ask you, I want to thank my teammates and my coaches for the opportunity to play on the ice.
I love
they
it.
Could ask you about the goal. Just focus yourself, because then you're going to get caught on, well, the goal was it, who passed me the puck, and you're going to be thinking about it. Just first thing you say, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here in front of the Philadelphia Flyers and 20,000 fans. I want to thank my coaches and teammates. And they did it, and it was great. And guess who was the star, the mite of the star of the game? Lila Picker, and she did pretty good on TV, on the Jumbotron. But again, it's because we trained them, we coached them, we developed them to be young leaders. So when they had the opportunity with that camera and that microphone was in their face, yeah, they're going to get nervous. Of course, everybody gets nervous, but they were ready for a response. And that's what we have to do, not just, when they're in front of us, when they're coaches. I'm still there for my teammates. for the rest of their life. I always say I'm about relationships. It's not about a transaction. So, for JB, when he comes to my office, when we're at West Point at 8 o'clock at night, of course I'm going to be there for him, right? But I'm also going to be there for him when he says, hey, I have this awesome podcast, which I'm a fan of already. He's like, can you come on with me, Lee? Absolutely. When can I get on?
Absolutely.
I love it.
Pat, I'll tell you what's funny about the story you just told. My son's going to be on Might on Ice at the Flyers game later this season. So you've just given me a tip. You affirm me, sir, because I've been doing an experimental program with my Might team this year. I've been running team building off ice, team bonding sessions with the team every week. And it's had a really positive effect on the team. It just goes to show you that you hear coaches, 8's too young for that. It's never too young, as you just proved, to start to show team dynamics and standards and service and understanding respect and how to be a great teammate. These are lessons you can start really right away. And that's going to lead me to the next question. And this one's just off the top of my head. So this wasn't in the ones we sent over, but I have to ask you, we're all in the people business here. We all believe in people. My line of work is I just want people to believe and trust again, teamwork again. And the idea that if we work together, we can accomplish some amazing things together. Country's been through a rough time the last 2 years because of COVID. It's just an interesting time period, right? I just want your thoughts. And again, I apologize for putting you on the spot. How can we inspire each other to be teammates again in this country? How can we inspire each other to strive for miracles on ice and, unbelievable plays, and really just something as simple as accomplishing something together? What are the keys to making that happen?
I think it's going back to the fundamentals. And the fundamentals of our country is united, we stand, divided, we fall. Right. And so are we putting our community and our country first, right? So for me, we went through a pandemic, several 100,000 Americans died, millions across the globe. It looks like we're out of it right now, meaning the worst of it. There's other countries still suffering. There's other countries that are still in lockdown, right? But the reality of it is like, listen, it was divisive for a lot of folks. There's a lot of divisiveness in political public service. But if you're not there every day, putting your pants on just like everybody else does and just say, hey, I'm here to make a difference. I'm here to make a positive influence in people's lives, to make a difference, to get things done.
Right.
It used to chat my ass, when people would say, wow, Patrick, you're a U.S. Congressman age 33. The average freshman congressman's in their late 50s. They're average to be a millionaire. And I'm like, yeah, I'm still paying my college loans off. It was before the post-Diamond GI Bill. But I was there. I didn't know if I was going to 2 years in Congress or 20 years. But I was there to make a difference. So I was there, when I wrote the post-Diamond GI Bill, which means a major difference for folks, because now we have about 1.1 million warriors or their family members that are going to college universities right now and across America. I'm proud about that, right? And so I was proud that when General Patrick Finnegan says to me, hey, Captain Murphy, listen, I want to join, the staff here at West Point, and I see how you coach kids. I'll never forget, I was coaching mites, when I'm at West Point, and one of the parents once said to me, hey, which one is your kid? Once you were the 5 or 6 year olds, I'm like, oh no, I'm here coaching. And they're like, really, you're a coach? I'm like, yeah, I played men's league hockey in Newburgh, and I go and I got a chance playing college, but I get there to teach these young kids. And I was a lector at the local Catholic church and stuff like that. Right. But it was given back, and so for me, when you say, how can we unite the country? How can we put the country first? It's by giving, by having that selfless heart. Right. What are you doing? If whatever political persuasion you are, if the president of the United States wasn't the person that you voted for, he's still your president. Still be respectful.
You got to respect the
don't
office.
Do the right. And just like, I didn't write bad tweets about the past president or the current president. And again, I wore my jersey because I'm a certain political party now. I was not, in my time in the military, I was unaffiliated. I wasn't either party, but when I ran, I had to pick a side, and I'm proud of that. I followed my dad's footsteps, but in that political party, but to me, the bottom line is, even when you get there, and whatever unit you're serving in, whether it's, your team in corporate America, whether it's your sports team, whether it's the military, are you doing things that make your community and your country better? And I think the one last thing I would say, because I know JB is, a Pittsburgh guy, I am so proud that my best friend in the Army was my best friend in Congress. His name's Tom Rooney. His dad was one of the owners of Pittsburgh Steelers. He didn't have to go into the Army. They own the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? One of the most iconic NFL teams in American history. He went, him and his wife both joined the Army. And this is before 9/11, by the way. Both joined the Army and both served with distinction. But when we were both, when General Finnegan says, hey, Patrick, I need some more Captain Murphys here to join West Point to teach these young Americans. And I said, and he goes, can you give me some other captains like you? And I said, yeah. I said, there's a guy, Tom Rooney at Fort Hood, Texas. He was my classmate in OBC. There's a guy, Scott Brenneman, who was 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. There was a gal, Captain Amy Hobby, who was at Fort Meade, Maryland. I said, and they joined our team up at West Point. And then, when I'm there and Tom Rooney, it was married with kids. I was still single when I was up at West Point at that time. And he would say, hey, Murph, could you watch my kids? Do you mind watching my kids? I was going to take Tara out for dinner. And I'm like, yeah, dude, no problem. But we used to talk politics. We used to talk about President Kennedy. We used to go to church together and stuff like that, right? I'm now, I go, 9/11 happens. I go to combat twice. I come back. I decided I want to get involved in politics. I had, it was before I started my new job after Congress. After the military. And I just started my new job and I declared for Congress. When I declared for the U.S. Congress, I had $322 in my bank account. Wow. Most folks didn't know that because I had not been working for a few months. I was, interviewing for jobs. And when I declared, Tom Rooney's family was one of the first families that supported me. And then when I'm in there and then I won that race, I only won by 0.6% by 1,518 votes at the 250,000 cast. Most folks never gave me a shot to win the primary or the general elections. I beat the incumbent. And then when I'm there, I saw we had the least amount of veterans serving. So when I was there and I saw an opportunity, I said, hey, Tom, you should run for Congress, man. If I could do it, you could do it, man. And he ran for Congress. He won. Wow. And he was a different political party than me. And so my best friend in the Army was my best friend in Congress. We were two different political parties. But again, the media doesn't cover those stories. The media wants infotainment. The media wants the far left, the far right. They want the people beating each other up because that's infotainment. Mm-hmm. And you have to recognize and not be played for a fool as an American that that's what they're trying to do. And by the way, we have foreign adversaries. We have foreign countries, Russia specifically, spending millions of dollars to divide our nation. They are amplifying the extreme voices on the far left and the far right. And if you don't see through it, right. If you're not there showing people grace, if you're not showing that and having empathy, like, hey, they have certain perspectives, the other political party, whatever if you're like, they have perspectives, but, don't make it personal. Don't go after people's kids. If they have a gaffe where they misspeak or something, don't call them out. Come on. Like there's enough challenges when we have this global economy. We have countries, other countries, frankly, like China, that have 1 million people who are in concentration camps. Right.
Which we're not talking about for some reason.
No. Right. We're worried about, stupid crap, right. On Fox News and MSNBC. And it come on, man. Like
CNN versus Fox News. Patrick, I love what you brought up. I know you knew my dad a little bit. He worked for Congressman John Murtha back in the day. Yep. Both legends, World War II vet, Korean War vet. And I remember, I was in the Army at 18, but I remember it was time to sign up to vote. And I was like, Dad, who do you vote for? And he was like, no, it's not how it works. And he brought me all the newspapers. He's like, you read, you decide, you look to who has the same views as you. But he said what you said. He said, whoever is elected, you always support that person. He's like, and that's why I always have. I voted Republican, Democrat, Independent. I voted all sides, and I've always supported that because it's that mutual respect. Right. The other thing you said, which is very important, Patrick, and I teach it in my leadership classes, is that JFK moment, right? When JFK stood up there after the Bay of Pigs, so a mission that he didn't even plan, came from the Eisenhower administration, and what did he say? My fault. Right. And it really wasn't, but he was. He took responsibility for it. He made changes in his cabinet, and his popularity went up like, 20% or some incredible number. Because I think sometimes, leaders, we make a mistake and then we just want to point, instead of saying, my bad.
Yeah.
I'll get better.
I want to jump on that because, and Patrick, you've done a great job at this. I imagine the listeners are doing one of two things right now. They're either going, wow, this is really great information, which is great if that's what you're thinking. But you also might be thinking, well, what party are they with? Right. And we have not said once on this show. If you want to know, you can look it up. I can tell all the listeners that there are 3 different parties represented here today. And I'm bringing that up only for this reason. We're having a conversation. We're learning from each other. This is what's not happening enough right now on any team, right? If your brain defaults to, well, what side are you on? I've got news for everybody. We're actually all on the same team, whether you realize it or not at the end of the day.
I'm on the Patrick Murphy team. Whatever way it doesn't matter. Whatever party he is,
we've completely forgotten. And this question is actually for both of you. And because we've forgotten that. We've forgotten we're all really trying to get to the same place together. At least we're supposed to be. So my question for both of you again is this. Patrick, you gave a great answer to my previous question about what to do. What about the people that say, why should I? Why should I give back? Right? Because that's the huge disconnect for me with people sometimes, right? First off, I think it might be surprising to people what you said, right? Well, the key to bringing it back is to serve others. And I agree with you.
Right.
I actually agree with you. And until you do it, it's one of those things you're not going to feel it till you do it. Right. But there's a large portion of people on both sides of the aisle with the attitude of, but why should I? What about me? What about me? That's the attitude. We talk about divided, we fall. I mean, that's the attitude that's going to bring it down. How do we combat that as leaders? How do we take someone? And again, I'm not saying push them away. That's not what I want. How do I take someone, a kid, a player? What about me? Why should I? And inspire that person to flip that around, because I want them to be with us on that kind of mission. I don't want them to go away. That's the opposite of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I would just say whether it's your neighbor, whether it's your player, whether it's your colleague, we all have a duty to make our teams, our community, and our country better.
Right.
It's in the preamble of our Constitution. Our Constitution is the blueprint of America, right? Whereas, the first 3 articles, it's like legislative branch, executive branch, judicial branch, 3 branches. I always say it's like rocks, paper, scissors. One's not more powerful than the other, right? But we all have this duty in the preamble to make a more perfect union, right? We have a great country because we're a good country. We're not perfect. We have faults, but if we continue to give back, if we make that team a little bit better, if we make our community a little bit better, if we make, and if we do those things, it makes our country better. So, talking, to say, hey, there's a challenge out there, there's things we do to be helpful. I mean, there are people who are hurting out there, right? So, God gave you some talents and some abilities to give back. And maybe it's not going to be, always in the athletic arena, but maybe it's in community service. Maybe it's, hey, the hockey, I will tell you, again, I've been very blessed and I'm lucky, right? But I was in Wilkes-Barre as a college hockey player, cadet in the Army ROTC program. There was and this is in December of 1995. I'm up in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. It's on the banks of the Susquehanna River. It's affiliated with Notre Dame. And King's College, was founded for American veterans coming back after World War II and the region's coal miners. And in Wilkes-Barre, there was a dike that broke in the Susquehanna River. It killed 6 people. And the riverbanks were overflowing. It happened it was a winter storm. And I'm at happy hour with my college teammates and my roommates. And we come back from happy hour, and they were evacuating the city. It was out of nowhere. They were basically like, hey, this dike broke, the rivers are rising, everyone has to get out of the city. But they said, all able-bodied men, please go down to the riverbanks and sandbag if you can. Now they would say able-bodied men and women, but that was what they said. So what did I do? Again, I'm not an expert sandbagger. I never did it in my life, but I was the captain of the hockey team. So what did I do? I called the 2 assistant captains. I said, hey, the hockey team's going to Sandbag. We're going to meet in the men's dorm. Be there in 20 minutes at 9:00. I at the time I was the president of student government. I called the vice president. I called the class president. I said, hey, student government, we're going to go Sandbag. Meet the men's dorm in 20 minutes. Right? We just did a phone back and called the other folks. We met there in 20 minutes. The college says, Patrick, we have 24 shovels to give you to go Sandbag down there. you have to personally sign for them. Now, again, I'm barely making ends meet. I'm working. I wasn't there on a college scholarship, so I was like, but I signed for him. And of course, I made sure we actually went up and bringing back 26 shovels, so I didn't have to pay any of the extra. But long
That's
story
my
short,
man, Patrick.
right?
That's what I like.
So, yep. So we went and we sandbagged. There was no articles about it. There's no press about it. It was just the right thing to do.
You ran
Little
towards
did
it.
I know.
Yeah.
And that to me was a defining moment. That led me that, 3 months later, President Bill Clinton came to Kings and to give money to help rebuild that dike, to help rebuild the area because of the massive flooding. And the father, James Lackameyer, was that I'll never forget this. It's February. I get a note. Hey, Father Lackameyer, Father Lackameyer wants to see you in his office. He's never asked to see me in his office. I have the Catholic guilt. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do? My roommates just stole a sign from the library, the periodical sign. It was a temporary, we're giving it back, but I was like, oh man, I'm like, oh, you can see it from the street. I'm like, I'm going to get, I'm going to get chewed out. I don't know. I'm in my mind, I'm like, what did I do wrong? So I go there and he's like, hey, listen, he goes, Patrick, I heard what you did during the flooding. And he goes, I know there's no articles about it. I heard through the grapevine. What you probably don't know is President Bill Clinton's coming to our campus in 3 days. And I'd like you to be the student that introduces him.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. So I got to meet the President of the United States, and then I was able to, it was the first time I actually was able to invite my mom and dad to come up. It was the first time I saw my old man, Sergeant Jack Murphy, cry with pride. When he saw me there with the President of the United States, as a 21-year-old college student introducing him. And I'll never forget. I also say, the speech was at like 9 o'clock or 9:30. I'll never forget. I showed up at PT that morning, and the professor of military science says to me, he goes, Patrick, are you like introducing the president 3 hours? I'm like, yes, sir. And he goes, what are you doing here? I'm like, well, like we have PT, like it's 6:30 in the morning. Like I got to show, like, and he's like,
standards, right?
Patrick, yeah, like you don't, you can't call out, like it's like you have to be there every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then But to me, that's how you have to live your life, right? You have to give back. And you make your own luck. You get lucky, and I got lucky in that instance to meet the president. Now, of course, what did the press say? They were looking for the next story. They were like, "Hey, well, Patrick, you're going to be the president someday? You're going to be the member of Congress someday?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm going into the Army. I'm hopefully going to be commissioned as a lieutenant. I'm going to lead men and women, and I'm going to the Army. So no, I'm not. That's not the plan. Now, eventually, it actually did happen, but that was one of those things where in the military." I'm a big believer in PTG, like post-traumatic growth. Like whether it was basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky, or Fort Bragg, North Carolina, or Fort Benning, Georgia, jumping out of airplanes, whatever. I've been put in these positions where I've grown from them, and whether it was in hockey rinks or in life, I'm trying to always grow, evolve, and better myself. And I compete. I mean, JB talked earlier. I mean, I was in the gym this morning. And, you see these young cats, and they were all tatted up. And I saw this one guy and he was curling. I'm like, he looks bigger to me and he was bulkier. I had already, ran a little bit and I'm out of the place, but I'm like, I'm going to go curl as much as that cat. I'm going to show him, and now again, I didn't say it to him, but my mind, I'm like, I saw he did 6, I'm doing 8. Like, and that's what I did,
Right.
and again, I'm always pushing myself to be better, not because I'm a great athlete, not because I'm the best ever, right? JB's a 10 times better athlete than I am, but it's because if I compete against that cat, or I compete in men's league hockey, or if I'm there, I don't let my son, 12-year-old, beat me one-on-one in basketball or whatever. Like, I'm out there. Now, again, I'm not being a jerk to him, but I always say, you want to beat your old man, you got to earn it. Like,
Right.
I'm not going to give this to you just I love
Absolutely.
you. Like, so I think that's how we all have to be, to get back and get better.
I love it.
No, I do
That's
too.
exactly it. Selfless service, giving back to others. I think that's why people are, in the military, and that's why they serve or they try to help veterans and continue that way. And I think that's continuing that and keeping that circle of people that continue to help. Patrick, you'll like this, but I see Brian Jensen, Nate Hunterton, Grace Chung's my dentist, all these former military people that have just, continue to bind together. Patrick, can you talk about your daily resilience? Obviously faith is big to you. We talk about faith being part of our lives, whatever you find, it's big for me. It's big for Lee. I know it's big for you. So that faith, resilience, how you start your day. What are some techniques you use that we can help others?
Well, for me, I've learned, just because, like UJB, like jumping airplanes, for as a profession, kind of jams up your back a little bit. So I got to go out there. I got to work out. Otherwise, my back kind of stiffens up. So I got to do some type of, run, lift weights, CrossFit, whatever. I got to do that pretty much every day. So I do get after it. And by the way, even if it's for 20 minutes, it's like, I do it for 20 minutes, but my heart rate's over 100. I have the
Right.
Apple Watch. Like I'm checking it out. Like I'm not there like looking in the mirror like, oh my God, like how big my arms are. I'm like there. I'm doing stuff, doing the next thing, doing the next thing, doing the next thing, and doing rotations. Right. So to me, that's important. Two, I start every day. I'm a big believer in calendars. I'm a big believer in that every day I do WMI. What's most important? What are the three things I'm going to accomplish today? Right. And so for me today, one of my three things are my kids. I'm only get a chance to be a dad once in my life, right? So I'll be picking up Maggie Murphy at Kamala Egan Catholic High School when she's done, at 2:35 today, right? And I built that in my schedule. I pick her up, I bring her home. I'm going back to work afterwards. By 3, I'm on another conference call. My son takes the bus home, but like that to me was one of my three things. And to me, like, that's why like the other one was, the Win podcast, right? So I did my homework. I already knew JB and knew, he's legend in the military circles. But Lee, I looked, oh man, Haverford guy, went to Drexel. Like I looked at your stuff because I want to prepare myself, for this interview. Like, so that to me, you always got to bring your A game. People expect you to do it. When someone asks Michael Jordan, well, why do you still play, when you're hurt? And stuff like that. He's like, well, there's kids that might never see me play, and I'm in their city, and I'm gonna bring it. And he plays with the flu and play with everyone has strains. I'll never forget. I joined the Army, and by the way, I always tell people about resiliency. Make a plan. You plan your work, and you work your plan. And guess what? You might not get those three things that are the WMI. What's most important? You might not get them done, but you got 2 out of 3 done. The next day, put that back on there. You have to always, and you have to think to yourself and be deliberate. What is most important? I mean, again, I have calendar, I have conference calls, but what's most important? And then, you also have, goals for yourself and what you want to do. And, I have personal goals, I have professional goals. And I will tell you, I do follow my heart. I follow my passions. Because then I never actually feel like I work a day in my life. To be quite honest with you, I love what I do. I'm very passionate. If I could, go there. When you talk about resiliency, you're going to fail. And I failed. It took me, I joined the Army. I was 19. I didn't go to the 82nd Airborne Division for 10 years. I said, I want to be an Airborne Ranger with the 82nd Airborne Division. I wrote, my uncle served in Vietnam with the 101st. He was 82nd Airborne too. I want to be like my uncle. But it took me 10 years, to be honest with you, right? Now, I was in the 82nd. I was in the Second Brigade Combat Team, and I was part of the invasion in Iraq, and we had a heck of a job. We got the Presidential Unit Citation. We did some pretty awesome things, taking out terrorists and some really cool stuff, right? So I was blessed in that way. Now, when I wrote that, I never thought it was going to take me 10 years. I never thought like, hey, because it wasn't easy. And I went to go to Fort Bragg, when I was a young lieutenant. I didn't get there till I was a captain, but, I didn't never quit on that goal. And when I did it, I was proud. But I would say to you, like now, what do I want to do? I'm really excited about my generation of Iraq, Afghanistan veterans being entrepreneurs. And what does that mean? Like entrepreneurs, right? And why should Patrick Murphy care about entrepreneurs? Because I'm not really about business in the sense that like I'm not motivated by money. I'm super happy living in Bristol. I'm not trying to live in the nicer town up the road. Like I'm super happy that I have a little house I can fish in my backyard, right? But I would say this, I care about helping my brothers and sisters. And so when I look at past generations, I say, look at what generations done before us. They've created, veterans came back from combat, started small businesses, and created the most iconic global brands. The largest sports apparel company in the world is Nike, started by Bill Bowerman and Phil Knight, both Army officers. Bill Bowerman got the Silver Star in World War II, and he was one of his student athletes at the University of Oregon was Phil Knight. And they started Nike, it was called Blue Ribbon Sports back then, but started Nike in the back of their, they support Nike again, about 40 billion in revenue each year. When I go travel, I get enterprise car rental, right? Why? Because there was a guy that was in the USS Enterprise in World War II, and he started a car rental place. It's called Enterprise. So I use enterprise car rental. When I look at Comcast, Comcast, largest media company in the world, started by Ralph Roberts, Navy veteran. You look at Walmart, Sam Walton, Army officer, comes back from World War II, starts the store. Largest retailer in the world is Walmart. Like, we should be proud about those global iconic brands, and then FedEx and Wendy's restaurant. I could name a lot of them, but half those veterans had the guts to start their own small business. Most small businesses will fail. I get it. But of our generation of Iraq, Afghanistan veterans, it's less than 5%. In World War II, half the veterans came back and started small businesses.
Right.
My generation, our generation, it's less than 5%. So what have I done? I partnered with a West Point guy named Sean Drake. He's out of Tampa, Florida. We started what's called Stony Lonesome Group. We've raised over $20 million. I invest $100,000, $200,000 in the veterans that we believe in that have a business plan in their business. And some of them have grown. I mean, one company is called ID.me. ID.me is worth about $1.5 billion.
Yeah,
right
I
now.
know them. Yeah.
Why? Yeah. Right
Yeah.
now, again, my little group, we only own about 1.5% of it, but 1.5% of $1.5 billion is a whole heck of a lot of money.
It is. Yeah.
But again, it's not because it's work. It's because I'm passionate about my brothers and sisters, and I try to help out. And I'm very proud about being a veteran. Like, again, I wasn't a son of a general. My dad was a petty officer, a radioman in the Navy, enlisted. My two uncles who were paratroopers were enlisted, right? So the fact that I became an officer, I'm like really proud about that, right? I'm not like, and again, I did ROTC. I didn't go to West Point, but hey, I must have been good enough that West Point asked me to teach there, right? And I feel like I'm part of it, and I still give back. I'm, still cheering from the distance. So sorry about that, but like that's what I'm passionate about. And I think, on that resiliency, you let people know, like, hey, I got your back. I'm supporting you. I understand a lot of those businesses that I'm supporting, and it's been over 49 companies I supported. A lot of them are not going to make it because most small businesses fail. But you know what? When they were in need, Patrick Murphy and Stony Lonesome Group had their back. And if they do great things, we will succeed from their success as well. So it's not like some charity.
No, you're exactly right. I just want to follow up on that, Lee, before I turn to you. Patrick's a couple of years ago, Ben Harrow and I, Ben's Special Forces, West Point grad, great, hero himself.
A personal role model. Oh yeah.
Personal role model. Yeah. We spoke at a, like an invite only who's who dinner before the Super Bowl. And it was funny because I kind of introduced him and he talked, it was great. And afterwards, these big heavy hitters are coming up. They're like, hey, what fund should I donate to? I want to write a check. I said, you absolutely should write a check to one of these great foundations. You decide. I said, but if you really want to help a veteran, hire a veteran.
Right.
And the guy said to me, Denver, big law firm. He's like, well, I own a law firm. I'm like, okay, we'll find a veteran. And what if they didn't go to law school? I go, send them to law school. So, years later, he ends up hiring an Air Force veteran, a woman, sends her to law school. And he's like, she's my best attorney. I said, right. What did I tell you? So you want to help a veteran, hire a veteran.
I'll say this too.
And you'll see it. Go ahead.
As part of Pivotal Moments Media, we have another channel called Charlie Mike, Patrick, and we have a show on that channel called Life After the Military, in which we interview transitioning military or people that have transitioned successfully and sometimes unsuccessfully. The way I'm going to equate this back to sport and to this audience is this. And I'm going to kind of come out and say it. Look, we have a massive problem with veteran suicide in this country. Massive problem. You want to talk about stories that aren't spoken about. And I'm always amazed that the men and women that kind of get out of that or move on from that, they find the solution by helping other veterans. And I'm bringing this back to what you said earlier. So often when you are kind of egoic in the sense of you might be depressed, you might be upset, you bring it internally of, what am I doing wrong, or what's wrong with me, or what do I need to do? Athletes, that every athlete's gone through that at some point of their career playing sports, right? The answer typically isn't the way you're thinking. The answer is, who can I help? I'm always amazed that when I'm feeling bad, I search out almost kind of ferociously. I need to help someone to help myself because it makes me feel good too, right? And it's genuine. I'm not just trying to help. Like, get over here so I can help you. It's genuine. Like the answer lies in that. you look at people who've gone through incredible trauma, and they're suicidal. And the way they get out of that state, at least momentarily, is to help other people in their situation. It brings me to my final point. This is encompassing everything we've talked about. No one can do this alone. Nobody. We've all have our teams. You all have your people. Sometimes it's your family. Sometimes it's Little League teammates. Sometimes it's your coworkers. Sometimes it's your neighbor. But nobody succeeds in this life alone. So going back to that question I asked earlier about like, why me? You can't do it alone. It's not possible. All right. And that's going to bring me to my final question, Pat, is the whole purpose of Pivotal Moments Media on our channel. It's about mental fitness and growing mental fitness. There is a massive stigma surrounding mental health and fitness still to this day. And again, our channel is all about athletics, but the question really spans everything, right? How important is mental fitness? How do you practice your mental fitness, right? How do we break the stigma behind mental fitness? Just, I know you're a champion of this in your work, but could you just talk to us about mental fitness for a few minutes?
I think it's incredibly important. And that's why, I talk about living a purpose-driven life, but I talk about the stigma of mental health, and mental health is just as important as physical health. So if you're not doing what's necessary to get you on the right track, you're wrong. And so there is a connection between mental health and physical health too. So, that's why I'm a big proponent for veterans, and I'm trying to work it where veterans can go to Planet Fitness or Crunch or other stuff or CrossFit for free or discounted rate, because the average veteran will put 20 pounds on, in their first 2 years when they leave service, because they're not there with teams and units. And you need to make sure that they're out there, doing the basics. I mean, staying active and physically fit. But I'd also just say, we've tried to break it down. When I was running the Army with then General Milley, we created what's called embedded behavioral health teams. What does that mean? So that when you're going to PT in the company area, it's 200 men and women, in that company area, battalion area, what you're doing is you're having actually the social worker, the psychologist, the psychiatrist, they're there, they're doing PT, they're right there. So soldiers don't have to go to the clinic. They don't have to go to the hospital to get mental health care, because that is viewed subconsciously. Oh, I'm sick, I got to go. I'm not sick. No, it is important to sit down and have counseling sessions. It's important to talk about what's keeping you up at night, why you're not getting sleep, what you can do a little bit better, because that's what, it's not just, and that's why I'm very deliberate and try to be thoughtful on my calendar and my journaling every day. Like, I'm like, what do I got to get done today? And what did I learn? And it's important. And to me, I know some people are like, oh, well, I have an electronic calendar. I got an electronic calendar too, right? But to me, it's mindfulness when I have it down on a sheet of paper and I'm writing it down, I can go back to it. I can learn 100%. From it. And every once in a while I say, what did I do last, February 26th, because it also orients you like, wow, I got a lot more done. And wow, I tried to do that. I didn't get there yet, man. Let me get back on the right in the front burner here, because I forgot about that. So I think that's incredibly important. And it is an epidemic, Lee. And I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's an epidemic, and we got to do better as a nation. I will say I'm super positive. And again, you heard me talk about entrepreneurship, right? These great young American heroes that served and were the cloth of our country. They've done great things, and they are more likely to be employed than civilians. They're more likely to start a small business, if that small business be successful. They're more likely to be little league coaches and pastor in churches. They're more likely to vote in elections than civilians, no matter what their political persuasion is. But the other side of the coin is, the flip side, they're more likely to be homeless. They're more likely to commit suicide. And a majority of those veterans who take their own life are not in the VA system. And we got to get more veterans. And that's why I support efforts. Every veteran, when you're leaving, you're transitioning out, you should automatically be enrolled in the VA. Whether you use the services or not, you should know that there's someone that you can call on the end, wherever community, whether you go back to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, like JB, or Philly, like I did, you have a POC, you have a point of contact at that local VA facility that you can go and talk to, and you can reach out to if it comes to that.
Yeah,
but you should also stress it.
Yeah, and don't wait 10 years like I did, Patrick. It took me so
Right.
long because you hide it. You're like, I'm good, and you can't
You're
sleep
not.
because you got
Yeah.
blood on your hands, the whole thing, right? And so
Right.
you can't do that. Amazing.
Well,
Patrick, listen, I hope you, and I mean this is all sincerity, I hope you run for the highest office in this country. I really do. I always, when we talked a few years ago, I wanted you to be the Secretary of the Army, but you're bigger than that. You really should run for the highest office in this country because you are exactly what this country needs. 100%.
Wow, I appreciate that. Most of those cats are like billionaires and multi-millionaires. So
No,
I'm
but you know
working my way
what?
up there, so.
But it doesn't matter because this is why you'll be so good.
let's say we could use a little
Yeah.
not that.
Right.
For
Yeah,
the future.
exactly.
But then they're gonna do the play-by-play, of me like, taking out the guy in my mentally cocky.
That's what I'm
like,
hoping.
hey,
That's great.
That's not
Oh, that's
presidential.
right here on this
You-
show.
You kidding me?
Right.
You'll get the whole East Coast of
Back in 22, he was on this podcast.
Oh,
He said he beat
my
up
gosh.
a guy
Right.
after
And
defensively.
right. And put a
You
little
get New
kid out
York,
there.
you
I'm
get
not-
New York, Boston, Pittsburgh, Philly, Jersey. They'll all vote for you.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, JB, I appreciate you're one of my personal role models, brother, and I appreciate it means a lot you saying that. Hey, listen, now I'm going to get back into political public service someday, right? And we'll see what capacity. But that's not why. To me, it's important to be involved in my kids' lives, right? I get a chance to be a dad once, and it is a major commitment. And if I do anything, I put my heart and soul into it. So we'll see what the future holds. But it is where my heart is, and we'll get after it. So
Amazing.
I appreciate you guys having me on, man. This was a lot of fun.
Pittsburgh and Philly working together. If
I
we
know,
can do
right?
it,
Who would have thought? If we can do it, we sound like the Rocky speech.
Yeah.
I can change. and you
everybody can change. No.
Yeah.
Patrick, it's been an honor. I've enjoyed every single second of this interview. This
So
has been
good.
a lot of fun, and I hope that our audience takes a lot away from it. And again, as you said, that's going to do it for this edition of Win Championship Trades for Life. For Patrick Murphy, JP Spizzo, I'm Lee Elias. Make sure you check out all of our episodes on pivotalmomentsmedia.com or wherever podcasts are out there. Thanks so much and have a great day, everyone.